how do we get our data for values? I've done videos about this. I talk about this in any like top 10 books to invest in or whatever videos that I do. I try to give you guys knowledge in a platform for you to take notes on how to gauge value, how to research the data, and find, crunch that data to have the most appropriate fair market values calculated that you can have. So we're going to get into it. We're going to read Justin's comment and question here. Justin says, sites like Cover Price and GPA provide updated sales data on comic books, right? They do. Okay, so on Whatnot, for example, sellers don't always list what books are being sold. So, for example, item number 1, auction number 1, comic book, generic comic lot number 25, right? He goes on to state, with no indicator of what books are sold on the receipt for sales like this, how can we truly rely on the sales data from sites like Cover Price and GPA? Same concept could also apply to comics sold at garage sales, flea markets. Should we look at the recorded sales data on these sites as merely a sample of what the overall market is doing for a particular book? The short answer is yes, and we're going to break that down. He goes on to say this. I believe there are too many variables at play to say the sales data on these sites are 100% accurate. You are right in the questions that you are pondering here and that you propose, Justin. Basically, first and foremost, we have to understand that any database like Cover Price or Go Collect or even GPA for graded books, because they only do graded books, only pulls from a sample size because they only pull from certain sources. For example, Cover Price pulls from eBay Sold. They pull from My Comic Shop. I'm pretty sure they pull from Heritage and another auction site. And I know that GPA pulls from Heritage. I do believe they probably pull most. I think most of GPA stuff comes from auction sites. I do believe they pull from eBay as well. I don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. The first thing to remember is that these databases are not crunching data from the entire market. So yes, you have to know that when you go into gauging your values. You have to. Also, another thing that you need to be aware of is that sometimes the data pulled into these databases is false. And I'm not saying they're falsifying data, but sometimes the algorithms grab things that shouldn't be there. For an example, there was some book that was hot a while back that I was looking at. And I mean, like the average fair market value, just say, was like around $200. But then there was one sale that was like $480. Turns out that they pulled in a sale from eBay that was of a 2-book lot of that book. So that's why I say you can't focus on outliers or just last high sale or et cetera, because sometimes that data can be misleading because this stuff is being pulled in by algorithms, and sometimes things slip through the algorithms that shouldn't be there, that skew the data. All right, keep that in mind as well. So you may then ask yourself, well, how do I know what a real fair market value is? Well, at this point in time, we never will, technically, because I don't think we will ever live in a world where LCS sales are calculated. And once upon a time, LCS sales is where the majority of comics were bought. That might be changing now, especially after COVID, but we still have a large amount. Obviously, there's still thousands of comic shops out there, brick and mortars, and thousands and thousands and thousands of books are being sold every day. Who's calculating, who's tallying those values? Nobody. Whatnot. Nobody's telling you Whatnot. I do hope that one day Whatnot, there could be an algorithm that does grab from Whatnot, at least the sales that specify, like at least for maybe graded books. And if they are putting the listing in as, you know, Amazing Spider-Man 300 CGC 9.6 or something like that, right? That would be great if Whatnot partnered with Cover Price or GPA to allow this to happen and for all of this data to be pulled into their databases. But you have to understand that this is probably the most important thing, folks. These fair market values should be understood to simply be fair market values in their specific marketplace. And what marketplace is that? It's either online or auction houses. Online, meaning not even live sales. I'm not even talking about live sales. Whatnot, IG live sales, YouTube live sales, Facebook live sales. No, I mean online is in primarily eBay and my comic shop and some of the online auction houses as well. Very small sample size, right? So I made videos before talking about, well, if you're in a different marketplace, the fair market value of that book might change. If you go and buy comic books from a garage sale, the fair market value may be different. Even if you're buying from an LCS, fair market value could be different. And I've talked about this before. Now, with big key books, it's a little different. This is more for your run-of-the-mill, run fillers, value books. Sometimes you're willing to pay more on eBay because you don't have to leave your house. You know, you don't got to get off your couch. You don't got to spend gas money driving to the LCS. That's why standard back issues at an LCS often, more often than not, need to have competitive prices. I'm not even going to call them fair market values because fair market value can change from day to day. It fluctuates. It's a rolling average. It's an estimate. And it depends on the marketplace. So you may be willing to pay $6 plus $5 shipping for some random, Thor book from the early 80s that isn't a key. But maybe when you go to an LCS, you don't want to pay $6 for that book. You took the time to drive, to spend gas money, to get dressed up, to shower, go drive 20 minutes to the shop. You want to pay $4 for that book. And that might be the competitive price that the LCS needs to charge to incentivize you getting up, getting your bummy butt dressed, get some shoes on and a clean shirt on, hop in your car and drive down to that shop. So there's a difference here between fair market value and competitive pricing. Make sense? Oh, yeah. See, there's a comic collector geek shows, and just sometimes there are issues. I will say this, though, too. Sometimes you can actually find better deals on big keys online in an auction on eBay or even in a live claim sale. So sometimes big keys are priced at a premium at the local LCS. So that's why, guys, fair market value is never an exact science. It fluctuates from day to day, week to week, venue to venue, marketplace to marketplace. That's why you always have to be patient. You have to do your due diligence. And you got to know what you are expecting from a sale of that book and the money that you're going to be putting down for that book. And like I always say, no matter the marketplace, the venue, whatever, don't ever hesitate to negotiate, right? Let's see. I think Pocan Joe Comic Review might have something interesting to say here. An auction can't be a point of data. It's not setting a market value because it's a matter of personal competition. You can't data point a person's emotions, at least no economic model. Okay, let's break this down. Is it Pocan Joe? I really like what you have to say here. I'm going to kind of play a little bit of devil's advocate, though. At heart, I'm agreeing with what you're saying, and I talk about this a lot, but I'm going to break this down. I'll play a little devil's advocate. Auctions absolutely can set the market value because they do. They can because they do. And do you know why they do? Because the market, you and I, consumers on the market, you know what we do? You know what we do? And I'm sure Pocan Joe, I'm sure you know this. You know what we do? We see a TV show or we see a trailer, somebody shows up, or we get a trailer or we get a casting and announcement, right? And we go ham. We go crazy. A couple people get into an auction and get into a bidding war with what are you saying here? Emotion. It's a matter of personal competition and that emotion, right? And what does that emotion do? Well, it drives this book 3 times the value of what it sold for the day before. But what do the other hundreds of consumers do? Well, they look at that auction and what it sold for. And you know what they tell themselves? Well, shoot, I better get my hands on one and I better be willing to pay that much too. And then what does it do? It sets the market because now you have everyone listing their books, putting them at buy it nows. They're looking at that FOMO'd out auction sale. And now they're pricing, say the book was selling for $120 the day before, and now it's selling for $350. Well, now all these flippers or sellers or dealers are saying, oh, I got 5 of these. I'm going to post them up on eBay. It's gotten hot. I'm going to set them for $340. Buy it now. And people are paying it. And then what does it do? It sets a new fair market value. So auctions can and do set market value, but like you say here, at least no economic model. And yes, that's how it should be. And that's what I keep trying to tell people. We aren't allowing supply to catch up with demand. We don't allow the fair market value to organically meet that economic model of supply and demand. And that's why essentially Pocan Joe is right in his assessment to say that we as the market, we as consumers should not be allowing a simple auction to dictate what we are willing to pay. They could be guidelines. They are indicators of a type of market, but we allow it to influence us so much that it shouldn't. Here's an example of a proper economic model. This book that was selling for $120. I mean, look, even buy it nows can. No economic model is perfect, and there's always going to be emotion involved. But say this book was selling for $120. And you get everyone flooding the market with buy it now books now that it got hot because of a trailer or cameo appearance in an MCU show or something. And everyone's setting their buy it nows for around $500. And nobody's buying it. What are they going to have to start doing? They're going to have to start lowering their prices until it gets to a market equilibrium to where then the consumers are willing to pay that fair market value. But Pocan Joe, great comment there